Namaste and welcome to another video. Today we're going to be talking about the total solar eclipse on August 12th, and this is for Pacific Standard Time in the west coast of the United States. Now we actually have three cosmic events in one day. We have our Grahan, or solar eclipse, we have Amavasya, and the Perseid meteor shower. Now all of these are events that occur every year, but they don't always occur together. Now what's interesting about this Grahan is if you see my previous video from the last eclipse cycle, you will see some of the same themes popping up. So eclipses usually build on the previous eclipse. Now this time we have a cluster of grahas in Karka Rashi. The sun and the moon are in the mystical nakshatra of Ashlesha, and Jupiter and Mercury are in Pushya. And Jupiter is combust at this moment, but will be coming out of combustion tomorrow morning in Pacific Standard Time. We also have Saturn Vakri, or retrograde. And we have Rahu and Dhanishta and Ketu and Magha at the very low degrees or high degrees, since they are retrograde planets or appear to be traveling retrograde. They are in, I believe, 5 degrees, and we'll check on the chart when we come to that slide. Next, we have Amavasya occurring at the same time. Now, this is very interesting because this is said to be the time when the Pitris return to Earth. And the third thing we have is the Perseid meteor shower, which will be occurring in the late night hours. And since there is no moon, this will be a prime viewing to see. Apparently, you can see hundreds of meteors per hour. Now, this is interesting because we have a video that went viral. I was seeing it all over X feeds of all of these snakes that were homeless after the destruction of a snake farm from a typhoon called Maysak that occurred in China's Guangxi region. And I just thought this was pretty much felt like this eclipse energy. Now, where is the eclipse visible? Now, what's really interesting is that one of the eclipse points that is going to be triggered is in Nuuk, Greenland. Now, Vice President Vance visited this base recently, earlier this year. Now, this with Antarctica, the ice wall at the end of the world. Now, if you check out my previous video on the eclipses, you'll see what I mean about this. Are both being affected. So we have the poles coming into play. Now, what I like about this graphic is you can see exactly where this is happening. So it's happening up at the poles and at the bottom where Antarctica is. Now, what's interesting is this is called the top of the world. This is the U.S. military base, and it's considered one of the most isolated places in the world. Now, if you look here, you can see the latitude and longitude if you're curious to look it up. But this is where Space Force of the United States is. And what's interesting about this is a base that deals with missile warnings and space surveillance operations, which is very much in alignment with this Rahu and Shatabisha. So what about Nuuk, Greenland? Now, this was the base that Vance visited in March of 2025, a year ago. Now, he's coming back around this eclipse time. Now, what's interesting about this area, it was the site of Project Iceworm in Cold War during 1959. Now, this project was covert, and it was aimed to install the first nuclear launch sites under the guise of building what they called Camp Century. Now, what's also interesting about Greenland is its rare earth minerals of uranium, copper, and graphite. Now, what's interesting about this is also Alla Island, Greenland, is home to the Sirius Dog Sled Patrol, which is an elite military unit under Arctic Command used for reconnaissance and protection of the North Arctic Station. And for us jyotish lovers, Sirius is a very interesting connection because this is a star that is associated with the dog days of summer, and I wonder where that came from. So here's the path of the eclipse. Now, you can find these graphics online. You can find them if you search on NASA's website, if you search on time and date. All of these graphics are readily available, but I thought this graphic was really interesting because it shows the path of totality right over Greenland. Now, the countries affected are going to be Russia, the United States, and if you think back to March 3rd in that eclipse, the Bering Strait in Russia was part of that eclipse, and that Bering Strait again is coming into play. So just in case you were wondering what was happening, we haven't heard anything about this. Maybe we will be hearing about this after this eclipse. Now, what's also interesting is some cities in the United States will have visibility of the eclipse, like New York City. So these upper areas here that are close in this zone will be able to see parts of the eclipse. Now, Eastern Canada, specifically Newfoundland, hopefully I said that right, is one of the other cities that is part of the eclipse. Now, that is somewhere in this area here, close to Greenland. And also Antarctica was affected by that eclipse on March 3rd. Here's that slide from that presentation. This area here was exactly where that eclipse was lighting up. And if we go back to that, why did I talk about Concordia Station? Because Concordia Station is a seismic, geomagnetic, climate, and astronomical studies area of Antarctica near Wilkes Land, which is a magnetic anomaly and mega impact crater made by an asteroid. Super interesting, right? So again, we're having this energy come to play in this eclipse here, with the poles coming into focus. Now, here is another slide showing the path from Madrid here on the right. So as this eclipse happens from Iceland all the way down, I don't know why that keeps happening, from Iceland all the way down to Spain and Madrid, and touching the top of Algeria there. And this is another view here. And this is just an idea of the point of the greatest eclipse is happening right off of Iceland. And here's a chart of the eclipse here. Now, this is from a program which is, you know, a lot of these jyotish programs like Parashara's Light, where this came from, they all are going to have different degrees. So we have to be conservative in our estimates that they might have slightly different degrees depending where you are in the world and also which program you use. Now, if you just look at this chart here, and I included the Shadbala just to give you an idea of the moon is so low on this scale. And that's because we have a couple of things happening. We have the moon being part of this eclipse. It's being hemmed by several planets. We have the sun there. So technically, the moon is being combusted by the sun because it's so close. quote unquote combust, even though the moon doesn't go combust. It still has that phenomenon where it's very close to the sun. So it cannot give, and then it's being part of an eclipse along with the benefic Jupiter just coming out of combustion, which is a slight ray of hope. But if we look at the sign of Cancer, it's actually being hemmed by two malefics. It's being hemmed by Mars and it's being hemmed by Ketu. Two very pitta planets. So Cancer people, I would suggest trying to maximize this eclipse time for what the yogis use it for, which is meditation. So here's a panchang for that day, which is important. Now the panchang has these two yogas of Varayan, which is lorded over by Kubera, which is a positive yoga, and a Pariga, which is Vishwakarma, which is a more negative yoga. And then the Karanas, we have two negative Karanas and one Somya Karana. And the Var is also important, which is the day, which is on a Wednesday. So there's a lot of energy happening with Mercury, as this is a nakshatra of Mercury. Now let's get to the eclipse times here. So these are some cities that I found, 5 cities where the eclipse is actually visible. Now, in tradition, we practice Sutak for the eclipse, which is where we do not take any food during the eclipse time and impose a fast depending on your health. If you have great health, then you can do the full Sutak, which is starting at 1:08 in the morning or 1 o'clock in the morning, New York City time. And if your health is not the greatest, or for old people, or people that are pregnant, if they want to do this modified Sutak, they could start at 9:30, and they would go from 9:30 till 2:38 till the eclipse ends. Some people fast the whole day, and the day before they take a pradosh. Now, here's the nakshatras involved in the eclipse. So it's Ashlesha, Pushya, Dhanishta, and Magha. Now, these are considered inauspicious for celebrations or muhurta for 6 months. Some people say after the eclipse, these are not used. Now, if you look at these nakshatras, they're not really nakshatras that people are going to be choosing anyways for muhurtas. So in that sense, I don't really see this being that limiting for people that need to find a good muhurta in these next 6 months. Now, what's interesting about this eclipse is, we'll go back to this first slide, it is in the nakshatra of Ashlesha. And Ashlesha is a nakshatra that has the influence of the moon and of Mercury. So my caution is for those that have children and small animals, just keep an eye on them. This is a nakshatra that can be very tikshna, which can be kind of cruel and piercing. So things may happen that you didn't anticipate for. So take care of your small animals, your pets, your children, and try and use this eclipse time, if you're awake, for sadhana, for meditation, for prayer. And with that, I'll end this short video on our eclipse and leave you with these times. And as always, Om Namah Shivaya.